other languages will not work.
He's the youngest.
I'm disappointed.
He's also the youngest.
Disappointed. Yeah,
He does double duty.
that's good.
Well, we have
Thank you, sir.
firstborn. She's the same.
All right, we're going to get started here today. Going to wrap up chapter 15, moving into chapter 16. For those of you joining online, sorry about last week. We were having some network issues, so we weren't able to live stream. Basically, all you missed is the crossing of the Red Sea, which is you can go watch the Ten Commandments movie and get the same thing. So,
Wow.
yeah, that's about the gist, right? I mean, that was what we talked about.
Yeah, true.
We basically just watched the movie for the class, right, last week. That was kind of the gist. No. So we'll just quickly sum up there a little bit. Essentially, so Israel crosses the Red Sea. They cross through on dry land. God closes up the Red Sea on the Egyptians, the chariots and those who are with Pharaoh. All of them perish, none survive. Israel gets out alive. And now as we move into chapter 15, there's this song that they're singing for victory over the Egyptians for what God has done, making claims about how he is my strength, my song, my salvation, my God. So we're seeing that what God set out to do all the way back when this was put into place, the whole thing was put into place, he's accomplishing. People are claiming him as his God. And just kind of the song is a reflection of that, what God has done, but also what God will do as they enter into the promised land, how the people in those other lands are very much afraid. They're quivering in their boots, if it were, just because of who God is, because they've heard the stories of what God has done. And so it's a good day to be Israel at this point in the text in chapter 15. And then we'll wrap it up here and then start going into chapter 16. So I believe we got through, hang on one second, basically the end of the song itself, kind of for the most part, verse 18. Is that accurate? We're kind of jumping into verse 19, starting there for today. Anybody need chapter 15 sheet? You got it. Got it. I see two. Do I have three? Three.
No improvement.
It's getting started. It's the hard part. To get started. Once you get started, it's not so bad. For whatever reason, it's the launch point, for lack of a better way of saying it.
What happened?
Who else needs it?
What happened?
We were here last week.
Oh, sure.
Something last week.
Yeah.
Was
No,
it
that's
you
amazing.
again exercising and walking again?
Oh,
Was that
yeah,
somebody
maybe
else?
that's it, yeah.
Yeah, get back on track.
That was the exercise
Oh, get back on
plan.
track. Okay, so limping is in now.
Limping is totally in. All the cool kids are doing it. So that's where we're at.
It's natural for me.
Oh, yeah. No, I'll head up to. I was gonna head out after class today, but I've got like 4 or 5 meetings this afternoon. But tomorrow I'll probably head up in the morning to Twin Cities Orthopedic at the urgent care just to see what they've got going for me. So
There you go.
yeah. So
PT.
love, yeah, PT and love being 40. Off to a
Yeah.
great start.
It gets worse.
I hear it. I hear it.
Talking to the wrong
Yeah,
crowd
I hear it.
How can you even sit up?
I mean, come
Here
on.
we go. I didn't read the room. I'm sorry. Oh man.
here. These kids these days.
Oh yeah. Kate had her violin out this weekend. Lenny's got his out today. Oh yeah. Boy, here we go into the grumbling and complaining of the wilderness. Let's go. All right, so verse 19. So basically, the song is still continuing. It's just more descriptive at this point. For when the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and his horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea. Then Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a tambourine in her hand, And all the women went out after her with tambourines and dancing, and Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea." Okay. So just a quick note on Miriam the prophetess. She's one of the only prophetesses mentioned in Scripture. Oftentimes her dancing is described as circular, just which would have been common for the time, but just kind of an amplification of the celebration, right? Lifting it up more, just showing how in-depth it was. And again, I think there is a real question about, how spontaneous was this? The celebration was probably spontaneous, but in terms of the song, all of those things, was that something that kind of worked later on? I was at Jen's wedding this weekend on Saturday. Jen Gross, well now Jen Jonason, right? Jonason, yep. And I got to the wedding celebration because I had church on Saturday night for Kate's tiny violin to be played for all of us there. And when I got there, the DJ's playing the songs and stuff, and people are dancing, and they're all doing the same things, and I just look at it and go, how do you all know this dance? Like, I don't know any of, did you practice this before you arrived? And it wasn't just once or twice. So I will say, maybe my view has changed on the song over the weekend. Maybe you can just spontaneously figure this stuff out. I don't know. That seemed to be the play for the weekend at the wedding, so who knows? But yeah. But the point is that there's very few prophetesses mentioned in Scripture, and here we just have an instance where Miriam is mentioned in one of the few ones. In terms of the role of the prophetess, this would kind of be it, the celebration element, that kind of thing. Not necessarily practicing a lot of the covenantal stuff that would have come with, say, the temple or other things along those lines, more of just the celebration aspect. All right, so then they get on the road. Verse 22, then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. So there you go. Now you know, right? And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule. And there he tested them, saying, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water. Okay. What's that, Nate?
All 1.2 million people got underneath those 70 trees.
Yep. Yep.
Big trees. Big trees.
I had a very similar thought. Yep. Good luck finding that shade. Yep. It's more of a timeshare at that point, probably. So, just a couple of notes on the bitter water and the complaints that come from that. So, in one of the commentaries, they mentioned that 3 days without water is actually probably the maximum you can go in the desert without water. So it's not just we're thirsty because it's been 3 days and you can still go another week and a half. Yeah. It really is a pretty serious situation, right? They need something to drink. They need something to consume at that point. Okay? And again, so it's another situation where their backs are up against the wall, and rather than lean on God, they lean into their grumbling and complaining, right? And we're going to see that here in a second as we go into chapter 16. But it is a situation that needs to be resolved. They do need water to drink. They need good water to drink, and it wasn't there initially, right? So then we get into verses 25 and 26, where, let's see here. Moses cried to the Lord showed him a log, threw it into the water became sweet. There the Lord made them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them. saying, if you will diligently listen. So let's talk about this testing here for a second, because it's going to come up in chapter 16 too, as well as other things. So now that they're out of Egypt, now that they're walking through this, there's been this process of establishing some of the relationship, right? So here's how you do the Passover. Here's how you do the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is what it means. This is why you do it. On and on it goes. And we see that continue throughout. Basically, this Exodus is also a time for God to get to know his people and vice versa. Not that he didn't know them, but it's almost kind of like speed dating, if you will, over the course of 40 years, right? It's just that concept, where now they're learning what it means to be in relationship. And so this testing is not necessarily like an academic exercise, like, okay, let's see how they do here. It's God showing them what the relationship should look like, and then basically holding them to that standard. And so when people look at this test, they go, okay, so it must be like a quiz or something like that. No, it's God laying out the standards. This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's supposed to be. And now please live into that, right? And not even please, live into it. That's the concept, okay? And that's the flow of this. And if you notice in this, God first provides and then he tells them what the expectation is. Right? So it's not saying, well, here's the expectation. Hopefully they can figure it out on their own. No, God gives them what they need. He gives them what will be helpful for them in their walk, right? And then holds them to that standard. Basically saying like, hey, I've given you this. Just know this about me, and please continue to trust this about me. And that's kind of how he operates. And so that's more the test. It's not so much an academic exercise or like a pop quiz or something. It's very open book, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? Anybody have open book tests before? Anybody remember those? A couple people? Yeah. I had maybe one in my life, I think is what it was. But it's kind of that gist. It's not like God's hiding something or trying to trap them or trick them or anything. It's just, hey, here's what it is. Now live into this. Any questions or thoughts on that? All right. So then we get to these palm trees, timeshare in wherever it is, Alim. There it is. For $10 a day. No. And so, yeah, for 2 camels, yeah. So essentially what we see there is just, with the palm trees and the place there, it's a place of relief. It's not just shade and water, it's also food, right? You've got coconuts and things that can come from the trees. So there's just an opportunity there for some refreshment, for lack of a better way of saying it, for the people of Israel. Yeah.
What Nate brought up a little bit before, you were just laughing about it, is
Yeah.
this is 1 million people we're talking about here.
Right.
So that had to be a pretty big area,
Yeah.
or distributed out. That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people, and that's the scope and scale that is so important to keep in mind as we keep walking through this, because you think about it. So we'll talk about the manna and quail today, right? Like you just think of the scope and scale of
Yeah,
feeding
yeah.
1 million people with quail, and how many quail would be needed to feed 1 million
Oh, yeah,
people,
exactly.
right? So you think about those things. Oftentimes you just think, oh, there's a couple of birds that happen to wander into the camp, right? Well, you're talking about, and then obviously that's not how it plays out, but you almost talk about like a mass extinction event in terms of how many quail are needed
Yeah.
to feed the people of Israel, right? So it's pretty crazy.
There's miraculous stuff going on
100%.
here.
That's all it is. It's miraculous. And that's the point of this, right? You talk about, as I mentioned, in the wilderness, in the desert, it's a time for them to, everybody got one okay? It's a time for Israel to get to know their God. And what they should understand from this is God is miraculous. He's amazing. He provides for them in all things. And that should be the thought process as they move forward. Obviously, it's not how they move forward. They easily forget, just as we easily forget. And so it's one of those concepts where, yeah, God is on full display here, right? There's nothing really that, even he makes his presence known, right? Like he shows up to Moses. They have the pillars of clouds and fire. They've got all these different things. So God is not necessarily hiding anything about who he is. And it's a great opportunity for them to see just how incredible he is and the relationship that they have with him. The fact that they're his people. Counting your blessings every morning, right? That you belong to him
Yeah.
versus, say, like Pharaoh or somebody else, right? Yeah. No, it is 100% miraculous. And I've seen that, again, more, as we go into chapter 16, some of those naturalistic ways, they talk about the quail. Well, it must have been a large herd that worked through. Or God just provided a lot of quail. That also could just be, sure, the migration patterns, whatever, that's fine. But the reality
Other
is,
than the loaves and fishes type thing where he,
oh yeah, he can make it. Yeah, oh yeah, he can make all those things come. Yeah, we only got 5 loaves and, or what is it, 5 loaves and 2 fish, right?
yeah,
Something like that.
Yep.
Feed 5,000 people
With leftovers.
with leftovers. Yeah.
Well, that's-
Yep. Yeah, and that's where the people are seeing miracles upon miracles upon miracles upon miracles, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a shame that this Bible kind of tries to naturalistically explain some of those things rather than just seeing that God is pretty incredible and will provide for his people still today, even in the miraculous. All right, so we're in chapter 16. So it says, they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they departed from the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, would that we have died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out of this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Welcome back. Yep. All right, so the journey continues. And essentially, just want to make sure I got my corrections on that. That essentially, oh my goodness, I apologize. The 15th day of the 2nd month. They've left, it's been about a month since they've left from Egypt. And just in that time, one of the interesting things here that I've got in my footnote, about a group of that size with livestock probably would have traveled no more than 10 miles per day. Just to kind of give I don't know how they figured that out. Maybe there's some computer simulation or something, I don't know. But you think about some of the things that like theologians use computers